and welcome to Recurrent Patterns, where we look for interesting patterns in technology, business, and culture. I'm your host, Vaclav Vincalek. Today on Recurrent Patterns, we will be talking about marketing. And no one else here is with me today than my special guest, Mark Schaefer. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Such an interesting topic.
Thank you. Mark, you achieved so many things in your life. And as I say, you started with the Fortune 100 company. Then you switched to Fortunate One company. And now you are with one of the unfortunate 50,000 companies. Or better say, you joined B Squared Media. So let's start there. And then we can start rolling back in history.
Sure. Well, I mean, I've had a great career. When I was with the Fortune 100 company, I got to do every kind of marketing job there is, really. And I think what made me successful was really being able to see these patterns that you talk about, see things that other people can't see. And I don't really know what the source of it is. I mean, I think some of it is just experience and just being observant, I think, and paying attention to things. But I see how trends sort of come together, and I have a good track record of predicting, where we need to be, where things are going. And so I had a very successful career in marketing. I didn't know it at the time, but as I look back, I had kind of a pioneering career in the digital space. A lot of the people who used to work for me have since come back to me and said, "Do you realize how far ahead we were?" When the internet was just starting, we were creating customer portals for our customers in Russia and China and South America, and creating a lot of value for the company. And then I started my own company 12 years ago. Started to do consulting. I've done teaching. I did a lot of writing. I've written 8 books, and that led to a speaking career, which has been great. I also teach at Rutgers University in their digital marketing program in their graduate studies level classes. And then, as you mentioned recently, just announced that I've become the chief operating officer for just an awesome agency, B Squared Media, and led by my dear friend Brooke Sellis. And I'm just at a point in my life where, first of all, I'm very fortunate that I can choose the things I want to do. I can choose the projects that I think are the most rewarding and fun. And I've worked with Brooke very closely for the last 5 or 6 years. We've been business partners, collaborators. Of course, she's the co-host of my Marketing Companion podcast, and we've become really good friends. And I just absolutely believe in what she's doing. She's really reinvented social media services and online customer care. There's no other way to really say it. And if you're in marketing or you're in business, it's so hard to find people who care about you and not just provide some sort of cookie cutter solution. And the more I learned about what Brooke was doing, the more I just believed in it. And her business is growing so fast. She needed executive level help. And I said, well, maybe this is something we can work on together. So we started actually talking about it about 6 months ago, and then just announced it a few weeks ago. And so that's an exciting new role for me.
Very exciting. Yes, I'm sure that Brooke will share exactly the same thought about you, because as you mentioned, you've been in the business for a long time. And if we start thinking about the patterns which you alluded to, and it's about the being observant.
Yeah.
And I think that's something which people don't do enough, to stop for a moment and think about it. Over the years, so you know, you were doing the marketing for now, what, 30 years, 30
Mm-hmm.
plus years, or
Mm-hmm.
longer than you try to, you know, you even dare to remember. And what is the recurrent pattern there? What do you see that does not change over time?
Well, I think one of the things that that I always had a lot of meaning for me is I read this book. I guess it was last year. It was a great biography of Leonardo da Vinci, written by Walter Isaacson. And I actually got to interview Walter Isaacson. I got to meet him. And he's written amazing biographies on Stephen Jobs and on Benjamin Franklin. And so he seems to have this pattern of writing about geniuses. And I asked him, well, what is the pattern? What makes a genius? And he said, a genius is somebody who can recognize patterns and has endless curiosity. And I think they really go hand in hand, because I think the breakthroughs for me come when you see a pattern and something doesn't make sense. Maybe breakthrough is when you see something that seems to break a pattern. You know, maybe that's really where the curiosity comes in. You know, look, I thought the world kind of worked this way. And you know, more than 90% of the time, I think you dig into it and you realize, you know, there's something wrong with the data, that it does fit in actually. But that's really when breakthrough thinking can occur. I think another great inspiration for me was the great management consultant and author Peter Drucker. And I got to study under Dr. Drucker when I was in graduate school. And it was a life-changing opportunity, obviously. And he used to talk about innovation through pattern recognition. And he used to use the example of a Sherlock Holmes novel. I think it was Hound of the Baskervilles. And the key to the solving the problem was the dog didn't bark. So if a stranger came to a house, the dog would bark, but the dog didn't bark. So he concluded the dog must have known whoever it was. And that was the key to the solution. So he said, whenever you're living your life and you're in business, never ignore it if the dog doesn't bark. If you expect the dog to bark and it doesn't bark, stop right there, because that's a clue. If you see something, a pattern that doesn't make sense, you expect the dog to bark, then you're on to something. You're on to something interesting. And so I think that's where that's my source of curiosity. I'm a great consumer of content around statistics when it comes to marketing, and charts and graphs and trends. And one of the sad things I see in our society is that people really don't understand charts, and they don't understand statistics at all. They don't even know enough really to ask the right questions. And they'll sort of like just repeat something that someone else says without thinking critically about it. And that's a lot of the time where, you know, the dog isn't barking. You know, you just think this just doesn't make sense. And a lot of the times people are just misinterpreting the data, or they don't understand the data. But that's where a lot of my ideas come from, is just this combination really of curiosity. Why is this happening? Why would that be? And then being able to connect the dots and see the patterns.
True words. Mark, I cannot say how much these things resonate with me. Of course, the unfortunate side effect is when you look for patterns, sometimes it's not there. And that's the pain which you experience in your business, where suddenly there is no business and you have to quickly find new pattern yes. Very true, very true. you work for the for Alcoa, for the Fortune 100 company. So
Mm-hmm.
you were working with hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm.
You were working on big projects.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that you made you to switch to Fortunate One? And what was suddenly the things which you could use? Because I observed many people from large organizations, and they are basically, it's impossible for them to switch from a big company to being just one, company of one or company of 20.
Well, that's a great question, and it is a hard transition. It was harder than I imagined, but I do think that I had some good preparation. You know, the the department that I ran at Alcoa, I was the global director of e-commerce for Alcoa. So anything with digital marketing, I led our first CRM implementation, any kind of digital advertising or digital presence that we had. I was sort of the go-to person around the world. And the way the company was organized, it was kind of a holding company of 45 different companies all around the world. And these companies had a tremendous amount of autonomy, other than perhaps safety and maybe some accounting procedures. Nothing was really standardized. These companies, they could run their business the way they needed to run them, in the region of the world where they were. And so trying to implement the company's first e-commerce solutions, the company's first digital marketing solutions, I had to be more or less an internal consultant. I had to learn how to create something effective. I had to create new products. I had to build alliances. I had to do sales at a very high executive level. And so those years in that job really prepared me very well for being a consultant in the outside world. So, and the other thing about my particular career of marketing is that there are patterns to marketing. Marketing is definitely scalable to different sorts of businesses. A lot of people are overwhelmed by marketing. They think it's so confusing and that you've got to be a creative genius. And that's not the case at all. Marketing begins with data. It begins with research. And most of the time, excuse me, our marketing strategy is dictated to us. We really don't have that many choices. If you look at the marketplace, you look at what your competitors are doing. Are there low barriers to entry or high barriers to entry? Are you established in the market or are you a newcomer? Is it, what's the nature of competition? Is it fierce competition or is it sort of a country club? What about growth? And you look at all these factors and basically you have one or two choices. And so if you just look at these constants, which a lot of people get, they overlook. They think marketing is like this endless buffet of choices, but it's not. You have very limited room to maneuver. I often say that maneuver is the most important word in marketing. And you've got these obstacles and you've got these challenges and you've got to find some place to create strategic leverage, but you don't have infinite choices. You usually have one or two choices based on the market conditions. And those market conditions really don't change a lot. So, so marketing is infinitely scalable, whether I'm working with an entrepreneur in tech, or I'm working with a Fortune 500 company, or I'm working with a nonprofit or a university. There are certain constants that you look for, and that determines your strategy. And once you have the strategy, then the world kind of opens in terms of how do you execute, how do you communicate, How do we bring in the creative element of marketing? But the strategy itself is pretty, it's pretty defined.
Very interesting. And so at the beginning, you alluded that you were able to do, based on your pattern recognition, you were able to do some predictions. So what, and you even wrote the book about that.
Yes. Well, I think that's one of the things I've become known for, is that I've got a track record of kind of naming different trends before other people see them. And one of the most famous ones, probably the most famous blog post I ever wrote, was all the way back in 2014. And what I saw happening was that this was the golden age of content marketing, where people were starting to discover that we didn't need to rely on traditional television networks or movie studios or book publishers, that anybody could publish content on the web, and companies could publish content on the web, very good content on the web, and we could attract attention to that content just like someone would read an article in a magazine or read a book. And if we could attract attention to that content, then look, they were on our website. Maybe we could lead them to do something else. And so this became a very popular notion. Obviously, when you have an opportunity like that, then you start getting companies who are in that business of creating content. You have evangelists and gurus that emerge that want you to create more and more and more content. And by the way, they'll help you do it. And what I saw was that this was falling into a pattern that in any human system or any economic system or any natural system, when you start having too much of something, then the system has to change. If you have too much water, you have a flood. If you have too much, money, then you need to, adjust something in your economy. And so what I saw happening is that there was too much content flooding the web, but we have a finite level of attention. So the content needed to attract that attention would have to get better. It would cost more. We would have to put more money behind it. Either we'd have to advertise it, promote it, or spend money on the creative. The content marketing was going to become much more difficult, much more expensive, and it would, in some smaller companies especially, would have to drop out. It would not be a rational strategy for them. Now, to me, that's common sense. It's just a pattern. It's always a pattern, everywhere and everything. If you have too much of something, something's got to change. Well, when I wrote that article, it was like I dropped a nuclear bomb because all these companies and all these gurus who had attached themselves to this trend just couldn't believe that I would say such a thing. They couldn't believe, and they denied it. And it was a very controversial article. And now all of them have come back and apologized, and they said you were right, because certainly that is the world that we live in today. There's a tremendous amount of noise out there, a tremendous amount of competition, and it is really hard to stand out. It's a lot harder to start a blog or a podcast than it was 12 years ago, right? If someone created a blog 12 years ago, it was a novelty. People would flock to it because it was so different. And, now it's something like, there are 3 years of content uploaded to YouTube every 8 minutes or something like that. I mean, it's just this tremendous explosion of content. And so we need to be very specific, very very mindful, very strategic about the content that we create, and we've got to plan around it. We've got to think it through. Otherwise, we're just creating random acts of content that are going to get, lost in the ocean.
Yes, and I think that's again a very good observation. And of course, the hindsight is always 2020. Everybody could see it, and I think that the other piece now that we adding constantly new and new channels where we're trying to grab attention of people. Mm-hmm. And I remember Twitter when it came out first, and I registered there many years ago. Start putting content out, then I automated, and basically then I dropped that. It was there was nobody I was able to talk to there. It didn't feel authentic, if you will, or it didn't have the meaning which I was looking, let's say, for conversation. And I think that reflooding the channels with content, but it's very difficult to have meaningful conversation. And perhaps that's what this is what people are trying to do with tons of content to start conversation. And that's, I think, one difficult thing to do is scale up conversation.
Well, I often say that marketers flock to whatever is popular until they ruin it. And certainly that was the case with Twitter. But I do think that those conversations are out there. And as a matter of fact, we talked about, this new company that I'm working with now, B Squared Media. That's exactly what they focus on is that I think it's an interesting observation that you make, that we sort of went through this time where marketers discovered that we can flood the world with content and try to control the message and use it as another place to show our ads. And then it didn't work. And people like you sort of pulled back. And they said, well, if that's the way it's going to be, I'm not going to be here anymore. And then if you're not there anymore, then the companies aren't going to be there anymore. But a sort of renaissance is occurring, I think. And that was something I predicted at the beginning of 2018, actually. I said, there's going to be a renaissance in Twitter because, look, Facebook has got so many problems. It's basically from a ethical standpoint, it's kind of a rudderless company and has had a lot of problems and will continue to have a lot of problems. Google has sort of become the same way, unfortunately. And, Twitter seemed like they were trying to do the right thing and try to get ahead of the curve. And I said, I think there's going to be a renaissance in Twitter. And that's certainly what's happened. They've had an increase in user growth. They've had an increase in conversations. They've had an increase in advertising revenue. And you can find conversations there. The people who use Twitter really love Twitter. I think that's happening in certain places on Facebook, especially Facebook groups. I think it's happening more and more on LinkedIn. Personally, I get more traffic and more engagement on LinkedIn than any other social media channel. I've made a lot of great professional connections there. And so one of the things that we're working on on B Squared Media is this idea of finding those conversations and not just reporting that conversation to a client, but really engaging in the conversation and seeing where it would go. And because we've been able to really have these conversations, we've had product insights for our customers. We've had marketing insights for our customers. So it's kind of like getting beyond the dashboard and really looking at what are people talking about? Where are the opportunities there? And you talk about a source of innovation. It's a gold mine. It's the greatest source of innovation in the history of the world, is that all these online conversations are going on and people are talking about products and ideas all for free. You just have to know how to look for them.
Definitely, I agree with you that I think one major difference between LinkedIn and the other social media platforms is that And I'm sure that viewers will immediately jump on it and tell me it's not true. But to the most extent, the identity of people on LinkedIn are known because you are joining companies. And I know that LinkedIn had to weed out a bunch of fake accounts. That happens on every single platform. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a platform where you can find experts, and when you can engage in conversation and learn from people. I think that's one of the strengths of the platform. This conversation is definitely a tribute to that. And I cannot tell you how many times when I was interested in a topic, I went and I started searching for people. I invited them, and I asked them questions. And you're right. In many instances, there was immediate yes, of course. How can I help you? And people are always willing to share what they know for free.
Yeah,
just sharing.
I've had a very good experience, specifically with LinkedIn. And I found people there to be very open and very generous. And the other thing that happens on LinkedIn that you don't see anywhere else really is that if you do good work on LinkedIn, LinkedIn rewards you. If I create a great article on LinkedIn, it will send it into like the open ocean of LinkedIn and expose it to more people than just your audience. And so I've had posts on LinkedIn that might be viewed by 50,000 people or 60,000 people because LinkedIn recognizes this as good work. The challenge with LinkedIn, it's not a place where you normally go to chit chat like Twitter or LinkedIn Twitter or Facebook. There's not a lot of compelling content there that you might see on YouTube or Instagram, something like that. So LinkedIn has its work cut out for it, that it needs to find interesting content that people will want to, go there and spend time with it. So when they find good quality content, they reward it. They encourage the people who are creating content there. And I've been rewarded there. I've had a lot of new connections there, a lot of new business opportunities based on the content that I'm creating there.
Yes. So now going to this latest chapter in your life, all the patterns you bring to proof, all the patterns you learn over the last 30 plus years. And of course, you will try to capitalize it and help grow the business and be successful as always. What should we be looking for? What patterns we should be looking for next 2-3 years? If you can share the secret, of course.
Well, I think the the thing that I think we all need to look at right now is that patterns and habits are being disrupted in really cataclysmic ways because of the virus. And the research shows that it takes a person about 21 days to really adopt a new habit. If you can do something repetitively, you wake up and you do something in the morning, or you create a new pattern before you go to bed at night. If you can do it for 21 days, then it becomes a habit. And what we're seeing is that people have been locked into their homes for much longer than 21 days. I know some people that it's going on, 80 days in some cities in the country, some places in the world. And so there are new patterns that are being created. And I think we need to be very mindful of that. So let me give you one example from my own life. I've been married for a long time. We've lived in the same place. We've lived in this house for about 6 years. So we have habits of what we do, where we go, our favorite restaurants. Then we were locked in for this, period of time. And we became concerned about, can we get groceries? Should we go to the grocery store? And so we subscribed to this service that delivers ingredients to your door, fresh ingredients and a recipe. And you can get this, 3 times a week or 4 times a week. So we said, well, we should do this. It solves a problem. We don't have to go to the grocery store. We're getting some fresh food. And so we're cooking anyway. And what we discovered is that we like it. It's convenient. It's teaching us new recipes. It's teaching us how to cook in some different ways. It's not that difficult. And so after the pandemic, we're going to continue to subscribe to this thing, even when things go back to normal, because we found that we like this. Now, think about how profound that is, that in this period, our relationship with food has changed. And I think it's going to change for a lot of people. And we are buying our food through a channel that we didn't even know existed 3 months ago. And that's going to be a long-term part of our lives now. So I think the way that people work are being disrupted. I think education is being disrupted. I think relationships are being disrupted. Certainly the idea of travel, how we travel, when we travel, is being disrupted. The ability to travel might be disrupted as these, big important companies go bankrupt in these economic times. So I think the most important thing for any person or any business right now is to think about what were the patterns that we had before the pandemic? What are the patterns that are emerging, the new patterns that are emerging after the pandemic? And then you've got to match. What do I do? What are my skills? What are my core competencies? Do they still fit where my customers are going to be? Or do I need to do, something else? Do I need to pivot? Do I need to invest in new technologies? How do I become relevant in this new normal that's emerging? And it's going to, there are going to be dramatic changes. I think even as we get back to something that we consider normal, I think people are going to have to there's going to be a period where they have to wake up and be reminded, oh yeah, I can go to a restaurant now. Oh, I can go to a theater now. Do I still want to do that? We've kind of discovered we can watch movies at home. We kind of like that. Maybe we shouldn't go to the movies anymore. Maybe it's too risky. Maybe I don't want to wear a mask to watch a movie. So there's going to be a lot of dramatic changes occurring, and we have to look at it in a very granular way to discover, how we need to be relevant going forward.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on all these points. I think that people find new patterns. They will like new patterns. One of the things I observe, definitely the restaurant industry is in deep trouble, because currently they talking about occupancy only 50%. I don't know any restaurants which can survive on suddenly half the capacity. Retail, you named it quite accurately. People will be afraid to go and be part of, do the shopping, because suddenly they realize they can buy everything online, and if they don't like it, they can just return it and they buy something new. So there will be definitely major disruptions in these areas, and travel is one of them. So Mark, before we go, people watching you, they realize how much you know, how successful you are. If somebody would like to be like you, what do they have to learn? What do they have to do to, after 34 years, to achieve what you've done?
Well, I would say don't be me. Be the best you. When I was starting out in the digital space, I was trying to be like everyone else, and that was a big problem, because the world didn't need more people that are just doing the same thing. Great marketing is not about conformity; it's about non-conformity. And when I talk to people and coach people, I have them think about how do you finish this sentence? Only I, or if your company, only we. That's about the hardest sentence to finish in the business world, but you have to do it. And I've never been able to find a person or a company where we haven't figured it out eventually. And you need to take that time to say, what is the unique value that I bring to the world? And it can't be, oh, we have great customer service. My garbage people have great customer service, right? Everybody has great customer service. That's just the table stakes to get in the game today. Why do customers love you? Why you? Why do they keep coming back? So you need to just really think about what's the unique value that you bring to the world? How do you finish that sentence? Only I, or only we. And once you do that, then the world kind of opens up to you, because now you know what to say and where to say it and who to say it to attract people that are going to be, attracted to you. And I think that's a good place for a lot of businesses to start. And that's where I start with a lot of the people that I coach.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Awesome last words. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. As always, I learned a lot. And for all the viewers, where they can find you?
It's easy to find me at businessesgrow.com. You don't have to remember how to spell Schaefer. You just have to remember businessesgrow.com. You can find my blog. You can find my podcast, all free. All my books are there. And I hope they'll find me and keep in touch with me on the web.
Thank you, Mark, for your time. Thank all you viewers for watching today. And don't forget to subscribe to our show. Until next time, I'm your host, Vaclav Vincalek. Bye-bye.